Hey, how you doing, listeners? It's Gene Versa. It's another episode of Serving Up Comics. Today we're talking Daredevil Born Again, and it's a show that came back after a couple years off the air. But I have a good friend of the show. He's a critic. He's done a lot of EPK on the red carpet. Welcome to the show, Mike. How you doing?
Hey Gene, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about Daredevil. Honestly, the show has been on my mind since the moment that I saw the first episode. And for my money, I couldn't have just asked for a better return to this universe, and this side of the MCU anyways,
Mhm.
than Born Again. I think that they just knocked it out of the park. Yeah. So I'm ready to get into it, man.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Mike, this is our first time on the show. Can you tell us a little about yourself or yeah.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, for those of you guys who don't know me, I'm Mike Manalo, from the Nerds of Color. I like going by cosplay correspondent on Instagram and Facebook for I don't know why. I don't know. I hope maybe it's not that obvious why. But in any case, no, I'm kidding. I love cosplaying, and the reason I love cosplaying is because when I grew up, the one thing in the world that I loved more than anything, more than movies even, was comic books and superheroes. And when I was a kid, I always wanted to be one, man. I mean, like when you asked me what I wanted to be, every kid wanted to be like a doctor or a
Mhm.
famous basketball player or president or something like that. We still have kids that are trying to be president today, apparently. Yeah, I mean, my response was I wanted to be a superhero, and people would tell me that's not a real thing. So I got older, I made adult money, and I made it a real thing. So I cosplay as superheroes a lot, particularly for a volunteer organization called the West Coast Avengers. And when I'm not avenging or writing articles, I'm just hanging out and having fun with good pals like Gene and going to conventions, going to movies. I'm a very simple man. I just love like geek shit and geek stuff. Sorry,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's nothing in this life that makes me more passionate and excited than talking Marvel, than watching Marvel, than being Marvel
Hmm.
even. And yeah, I mean, like it's all just it's everything to me. It's life. Marvel is life. To paraphrase Danny Rojas, instead of football, I'm gonna say Marvel.
Yeah. No, it's there's so much comics and movies that you can last like a whole lifetime, you know? Yeah. But anything you've been reading, we always try to like start off these podcasts with any comic recommendations if you want
Yeah.
to shout any.
So
Yeah.
there's good stuff going on both DC and Marvel right now. There's a lot of absolute stuff going on DC.
Hmm.
Absolute Green Lantern, absolute Flash, and that stuff has been awesome. I picked up Absolute Flash, I think first issue a couple of weeks ago, loving it. But in the spirit of today and of Daredevil,
Hmm.
there is an amazing well, it's a mini series, and I don't know if the whole mini series is going to be amazing. But Charles Soule, who
Hmm.
wrote for Daredevil before, in fact, he was one of the few that came up with the Mayor Fisk storyline. And just clarify, Mayor Fisk storyline, not the Devil's Reign storyline,
Yeah.
by Chip Starsky. But Charles Soule did the Mayor Fisk storyline, and he's coming back to do kind of an almost like Elseworlds take on Daredevil called
Hmm.
Daredevil Cold Day in Hell, and that is mind-blowingly good from the first issue. I literally can't wait for that second issue. The whole premise is very much Dark Knight Returns
Yeah.
ish, and it's sort of like when you think about things like Old Man Logan, Old Man Hawkeye. Marvel has had really good success with a lot of these Elseworld sort of older, crankier, dystopian type superhero stories, and amplify that by Daredevil, and Matt Murdock, and where somebody with who is visually impaired, is now in his 70s.
Hmm.
His powers don't necessarily work as well as they used to, and New York is now a cesspool that's just controlled by like martial law and everything, and it's so good. Anyways, I don't want to spoil too much about it, but it's such a good, like, it was a great first issue, and I can't wait to read the rest of it. So those are some of the things that I'm reading right now. I love the absolute stuff going on in DC, and I'm loving Daredevil, Cold Day in Hell, and then also some of the X-Men stuff too, the
Hmm.
post Krakoa kind of runs. Although to be honest, I'm not liking it nearly as much as the Krakoan era so
Hmm.
far, but there's some really good stuff in there. So I definitely recommend picking some of that stuff up. And Marvel's also got the Ultimate stuff in
Yeah,
full blast right
it's
now,
been
which has
good.
just been phenomenal, phenomenal. Man,
Love
I
those.
swear I could go on all day, but I feel like I'm going to be detracting from the main event, which is Born Again. But
Yeah.
yeah, pick up the Ultimate stuff. Ultimate Wolverine is awesome. Ultimate Spider-Man's been great. Pick up Daredevil, Cold Day in Hell, and then pick
Hmm.
up some of the Absolute stuff from DC. Oh, and then Hush 2 has been off to a good start too for Batman fans out there if you guys like that. So yeah, that's everything that I've been reading on the comic side. It's been fun. It's been fun.
Yeah, no, it's some good choices. I have to pick up Cold Day in Hell because yeah, everything about that looked really fun and interesting, and it's yeah, it's cool to see him in that, that environment too. Just a Dark Knight Returns. So
It's so good, man. The artwork in that as well is just phenomenal too. I'm on my Daredevil era right now.
yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, I wake up in the morning with this helmet. I go to work with this helmet. I go to the bathroom with this helmet. I'm just in that era right now. So, yeah. Cold Day in Hell. That's why. No, I'm kidding. I don't actually do any of those things, guys. Just want to clarify that in
Yeah, no,
case people actually think I'm an absolute weirdo.
that's all good.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, kind of going into some of the topics right now. The original Netflix Daredevil show. Can't believe it. It came out 10 years ago.
10 years ago,
Yeah,
dude.
that's
Wow.
crazy.
Are you feeling old right now? Are you feeling as old as I am?
A little
Like,
bit, a little
are
bit.
you feeling like Matt Murdock, Cold Day in Hell old right now? Like, I'm feeling that.
A little, but it's like it's kind of weird because it's like, for 10 years for a show I've only had like 3 seasons. Well, I
Yeah.
guess it was a spin-off Defenders. Um, so three seasons, and had a lot of, I guess, well, yeah, there was a hiatus in between seasons.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just also just caught in the middle of like Netflix, Marvel, this losing the rights, and then the show, um, the show just kind of in limbo, and the fans were really adamant to bring it back.
Mhm.
And also too, I feel like with Marvel TV, it was also the question of uh, was it in continuity? Because it's like Agents of Shield,
Oh
some of
yeah.
some of those shows, like I don't think some of it's in canon, but with Spider-Man, his cameo in Spider-Man No Way Home,
Yeah.
he was canon, so
And
that was
then
kind of the start. Oh, sorry,
Fisk and
Hawkeye.
Hawkeye too,
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, but like the moment in the theater when I was at the opening night for No Way Home,
Hmm.
as soon as the cane came down,
Yeah.
I was screaming, dude. I was screaming my head off. I was like, "Oh my god!" But the
Yeah.
thing is, you couldn't hear me scream because everyone else around me was screaming, and that was like the greatest moment in the world because we got back our Matt, we got back Charlie, and
Hmm.
and that really confirmed that this was the return. I know that we're gonna get there, in our talk, but man, that just goes to show you the affection that came out of that monumentally phenomenal series
Yeah.
back in the day at
Yeah.
Netflix. Yeah.
Yeah. What a ride it's been.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um,
What was your favorite season?
I think, you know what? I think that first season is really great. I think that's probably like the best season, but my favorite season was season two. Um,
Whoa.
yeah, because
Okay.
I know season two, I think there's, some legitimate critiques, but uh, I really appreciated that because he was just in the suit the whole time. I feel with some of comic book television, some of the shows, and not all of them, but like they're almost like afraid to just like show them in the costume, and just being like a superhero, because it's like, you'll have stuff. I mean, like Arrow, Arrow was
Yeah.
in the costume, but like, like Smallville, or for some of the Defenders characters like Iron Fist, not really in the costume,
Yeah.
and all that. But it was just cool to just see him. He's fully formed. He's Daredevil. He's going about. He's fighting the Hand. He's
Yeah.
meeting Punisher,
Hmm.
and just like his romance with like Elektra, and like him and Karen not like not being together and then being together, and it was so much going on that season. I really enjoyed it. So I think season two is probably my favorite.
That's awesome. I gotta be honest, okay. Um, I love that you said that. Season two is a really good season. I don't think it gets a whole lot of love.
Hmm.
I will say season two is the most I was ever annoyed with Matt Murdock.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was so annoyed with Matt. And look, Matt is a superhero. He
Hmm.
still is a superhero in his own right, and he's a Catholic superhero at that, which
Hmm.
is incredibly important to the character of Matt
Yes.
Murdock.
Yeah.
As such, the no killing thing is absolutely, out of the question.
Hmm.
But whenever Frank is on the screen and Frank is doing his thing, I'm yelling at the screen, Matt, let Frank cook. For the love of God, let him just solve the problem. Every reason that the issues in season two escalate are because you're not letting Frank do what Frank needs to do.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I remember because the cool thing about me being a superhero fan and having been a superhero fan since I was 6,
Hmm.
my mom loved superheroes as much as me. I got her into it because like that's what I grew up with. I
Yeah.
guess maybe she likes seeing her little boy still be her little boy sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we were watching Daredevil season two, and my mom, I think part of it is she probably has a crush on John Bernthal. I'm not gonna lie, it might be a good part of it.
Yeah.
But and why not, right?
Hmm.
But every time Frank would come on screen and Frank would be this close to taking out a bad guy, Matt would come and intervene, and both of us would scream at the screen, "What the hell are you doing? No, no, stop! Let him! Ah, God! He got away. Good job, Matt. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, it annoyed me to no end. Having said that, though, the one thing that I kind of wish that they did with season two, is I wish that they part of it was I wish it was split into two seasons. I
Hmm.
wish you had a Punisher exclusive season, and I wish you had a Hand exclusive season,
Mm.
because I do think that the two didn't blend super well together. The
Yeah.
last season finale of season two really kind of made me mad, because here are these two characters, two philosophically different and characters in opposition with one another. The entire season they're going back and forth at it, and then Matt suddenly, we detract from that storyline completely. We focus on Elektra and the Hand. The Hand is going to take over and destroy New York. And then all of a sudden, spontaneously, there's Frank on top of the rooftop shooting people for Daredevil, and
Yeah.
Matt's okay with it. And I'm like, that didn't feel earned. There was no buildup there. He's
Hmm.
just showing up. He doesn't even know anything about the Hand or Elektra or any of these ninjas. Matt didn't ask for his help. He's just there. And I'm
Yeah.
like, why? Versus, and we're gonna get into it,
Yeah.
what we end up seeing in Born Again, which I thought very much felt earned for a multitude of reasons. Frank at the in the season finale and everything like that. But we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I love that you loved season two. I have
Thanks.
definitely my criticisms of it.
Yeah.
But overall, it's an underrated season of television.
Yeah, it really is. And also just with just some of the like shows that we have on like Netflix or some of the streaming shows, looking back at like the first three seasons of Daredevil, like, oh man, I love when it's like it was for more or less, it was like a consistent show, came out pretty much every year. It didn't feel rushed.
Yeah.
And from start to finish, people really believed in what they were doing, and it just didn't feel like content, I would say. So
Do you think
really,
Born Again feels like that?
no, that's the thing. I feel, and we'll get into that, but I feel for Born Again, it really developed what they had, and the actual stuff that's been out in the open that they had to refilm and everything. There was at least like an effort to be like, okay, we have to get this right,
Yeah.
because it's like the show, it's been around before us, is a different creative team, and it has a loyal fan base, so it's like we
Yeah.
better make sure everyone's happy if we're gonna do this. So yeah.
Don't piss off Marvel fans any more than Secret Invasion did,
Oh yeah.
basically.
I never finished that show.
Oh, you shouldn't. You don't
Yeah,
need
I
to.
don't
Just
think I.
pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It literally, you don't need to. None of it makes sense. And then as soon as you watch that, you know what's funny is, and I know this is a hot button topic. We're getting super off topic, and I
No,
apologize
it's all
for
right.
this.
It's all right.
But
Pick it up.
so many people hate on the Marvels. I
Hmm.
actually like the Marvels. I find it delightful. I think it's fun. I
Hmm.
would prefer watching that over any moment of Secret Invasion,
Yeah.
and who Fury is in the Marvels versus who he is in Secret Invasion couldn't be like two different characters
Yeah.
completely. I didn't understand what the hell they were doing with Secret Invasion. But apropos of that, we're not getting that with Daredevil Born Again. We're getting something good. To your
Hmm.
point, this isn't just content for content's sake. So sorry, we're definitely going to get into that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry to detract,
No,
but
no.
I wanted to ask. Yeah, that was the big the question for me is how you felt about Born Again, basically. But I know we'll get into
We'll get
that more.
into that. Yeah. We get off topic all the time on this podcast, so it's all right.
How can you not when it comes to superheroes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially a universe as grand as the MCU, you know?
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. But our the Netflix show, it was a such a great ride.
Uh-huh.
Um the shows just it was coming out when the MCU was a very certain flavor of,
Mm-hmm.
like, it was PG-13 uh audience, just general audience. And not to say like general audience can't enjoy Daredevil, but Daredevil was very, like, it's an R-rated show. It's almost like a counterculture sort of programming. And looking back at some of those episodes, it's just like they go to some, like, really interesting places. And
Yeah.
just having that at the time is like a good substitute to some of the superhero films that you were seeing. It was really great. That's just like my, off the top of my head, like my take on those first three seasons.
Yeah, when you look at because that came out 2015,
Hmm.
2014-ish, right?
Yes,
Around that same
2015. Yeah.
2015, around that same year, we got Age of Ultron, right?
Hmm.
And here you've got Age of Ultron, this huge, bombastic, you know, very fantastical sort of feel to it. It's as comic booky as you can really get, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
floating cities, Ultron, some crazy stuff happening, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, all that stuff. And we ended up loving all of that event, down the line because it all just, builds into this wonderful picture that ends up being the culmination of the Infinity Saga. But
Hmm.
but with those larger than life narratives, you don't see the effect on regular people. You don't
No.
see the effect of a superhero universe on people that are just living their day-to-day lives, trying to wake up in the morning and survive the day at night when they go to bed. And that's what Daredevil and the Netflix series did. It took this universe and it grounded it down to the street level heroics that actually I think were incredibly important for folks to focus on. We weren't talking about some apocalyptic thing. I mean, yeah, Defenders, of course, had some apocalyptic stuff and, here and there. But overall, these shows were centered on Matt as a human, Jessica as a human, Luke Cage as a human. I'm not going to name the fourth one because I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the Defenders essentially as humans and as New Yorkers, people trying to do right by their neighborhoods, by their cities, and by the people in their communities who didn't have anyone to defend them. I mean, like when I'm going to, again, tangentially
Yeah. Yeah.
talk about a scene in No Way Home. Sorry, no, Homecoming. In Homecoming, where Peter Parker asks Tony, "Oh, I mean, am I going to join the Avengers or do I call you or something like that when something goes wrong?" And he goes, "That's above our pay grade." You know,
Hmm.
that's essentially what we're seeing with the Daredevil series and everything on Netflix was the adventures of people that the Avengers wouldn't look twice at because it's quote unquote above their pay grade. And I think when you have that kind of storytelling and those kinds of heroes challenging and up against the juxtaposition between that and these larger than life stories with Iron Man and Captain America and the Hulk, you give audiences a much more fleshed out and interesting universe in which they can immerse themselves in.
Yeah.
And that's really what I loved about it. That's what I loved about it. You could go hard because it was on Netflix. You can crush a man's skull with a card door. Like
Yeah.
you could do so many crazy stuff. And for what it's worth, and we're gonna get into this later, I'm glad that they didn't pull punches for Born Again when they brought that back. I'm glad that it's exploring the day-to-day lives of people on the street, quite literally in this case too, because that's what we loved so much about the Netflix series.
Hmm.
These explorations of the characters and the street level worlds that they lived in, the day-to-day lives, the hardships that come with things like alcoholism in the case of Jessica Jones,
Yeah.
faith in the case of Matt Murdock, the being a man of the people at a time when his people were being put down in the case of Luke Cage, and
Hmm.
whatever bull crap was going on with Iron Fist
Iron
around
Fist,
the yeah,
a rich person problem of
yeah.
corporate takeovers, I guess.
You know what the point of Iron Fist was? It was how white men basically steal the show and the stars and then the front the front billing from great female action leads.
Oh yeah,
That's literally
Jessica.
what I took from Iron Fist.
Yeah, Jessica Henwick.
Anyway,
Yeah, she's
yeah.
great. She's the best part of that show, and
Not just
she
because I have a crush on her. She's amazing.
yeah, she's great. But like, she actually learned the fight choreography too.
Yeah, yeah. Colleen Wing was the hero there. It was
Totally.
literally like watching the Green Hornet, where Kato's doing all
Mm,
the awesome stuff, and it's the Green Hornet that gets the credit for it. Although in the
yeah,
case of the Green Hornet, at least fans recognized who the star was. It was
yeah.
really Kato. And then even with Iron Fist, everyone by the end of Iron Fist was just like, you know what? I mean, like, screw Danny Rand. Let's let Colleen Wing be the Iron Fist. And then
And
it
she
ends
was,
that
and
way.
she
And you're
was.
like, all right.
Maybe she'll come back as like Iron Fist for the
That's what I
Defenders.
hope. I hope when the Defenders eventually come back to the MCU, she'll be like, oh, Danny died. Anyways, I'm the new Iron Fist
Yeah,
now.
I mean, it could.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a great show. And then it ended. No, I wouldn't say it's like a cliffhanger, but it just, I mean, it ended on at least like a good note, but
Yeah.
it also it left you wanting more
Yeah.
too. And it was like having Bullseye finally come into the picture.
Mhm.
Love that character. Everything with Bullseye they did that season, pretty amazing, pretty interesting. It was basically his origin story. Um, we didn't see him fully formed, but we did in this Born Again. But Kingpin, him and Kingpin were in a really interesting place of almost like a truce, and really wanted to see another season. And then like all the
No.
internal problems started.
Mm.
So
Can I say season three, actually, if you were to ask me my favorite season, it's actually season three. Now, I
mm,
love the first season. I think the first season's great. I think it does take a little bit of time to set up.
yeah,
And to your point, one of the reasons why you like the season two was because Matt's in costume. We don't get to that in this first season. I mean, we got the awesome black suit, in the
yes, which
Miller Run
is
and everything like
yeah,
that, which is wonderful. But we don't get the actual Daredevil horns and the red outfit and the billy clubs until end of season one and season two. And to me, everybody wanted to see that, and I love that it's all earned because season one is so good.
yeah.
But I loved season three because it's kind of the best of both worlds. We get the suit a lot more in season three, and then but it's not necessarily worn by Matt half the time, which
Yeah.
I thought was very cool.
Hmm.
And then you also get the grit of Matt. Man, how many times is Daredevil going to get born again? I feel like every season Matt loses the desire and the faith to become Daredevil, and then he has to
Uh-huh.
become Daredevil again. But season three, for the reasons that you had an awesome the suit a lot of the time, and Bullseye, hands down, being one of my favorite villains in all of Marvel Comics because much like the Joker, Bullseye's a man that operates without reason, without logic, without justification.
Hmm.
The only justification that he has is that he loves the violence and he loves the chaos, much like the Joker himself. And he's just cold blooded and psychotic that way. And I think you get that a lot in season three of the original Netflix show. And I think that that's one of the things that sort of evolves in Born Again, which I loved and I'm okay with. But there's a part of me, and we'll get to this when we get to Born Again, where I'm kind of like, careful with Bullseye now. We don't
Yeah.
want too much. He
Yeah.
needs to be a mystery to Matt. He needs to be a mystery to everyone. And his motivations have to, he needs to basically be comic book Anton Sugar.
Yeah.
He needs to operate as an agent of chaos without any rhyme or reason. That is literally one of the most dangerous walking men on the planet. And that's why I love him so much as a villain. So I hope, the way that season one of Born Again ends, when we talk about it, there's something there that kind of bothered me, and we'll get to that eventually. But season three was peak Bullseye because of that psychotic behavior. The bulletin attack scene is literally one of my favorite sequences in all three seasons of Daredevil and Daredevil Born Again. It is tense, it is scary, and that scene where Matt just like goes up to Bullseye. He's in the Daredevil costume. He's like, Matt's like, who the hell are you? And he's like, I'm Daredevil. And he smiles with that sadistic grin. And then Matt is doing everything to find cover. And all it takes is Matt to make a small noise, and Bullseye picks up a baseball, bounces off the wall, and pegs Matt in the face with it. It's awesome. It's
Yeah.
such a
It's a
dangerous
great
and
scene.
scary and wonderful scene. The way that Fisk and Bullseye are kind of interacting, the way Vanessa plays into it, which ends up, really building on being built upon this, in this season of Born Again. And really that truce between Matt and Wilson, where he takes off his mask and he's like, I beat you, I love that. It's so good. And it made me miss those characters once we found out that this was the end, So but we got them back. We got them back.
Yeah.
Well, no, we got 2/3 of them back. One third
Yeah.
is not coming back. Well, we don't know, maybe, but well, anyways, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After it ended, so it's like 2018, and then it was weird timing because it's like there was seasons of other Defender shows that were already coming out, and it felt
Yeah.
like almost like a domino effect. I remember because they're like
Oh yeah.
it was like Luke Cage canceled, and it's like oh, and then it's like Punisher canceled, then it was Daredevil, and then you're like oh, I think it's everything's done. Did you feel like it would be revived during that time? It was like
No,
2019.
I honestly didn't. I honestly didn't because look, and this is the double-edged sword of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Don't get me wrong, it is my favorite franchise of all time, and I'm a ride or die man. You can even play Quantumania for me, and I'll find good stuff in that movie.
Sure.
I will say this: like, while there are two projects in the MCU that I absolutely hate, none of those two are movies. Nothing that's ever hit the big screen I've actually hated, and that includes Quantumania.
Hmm.
Quantumania is not a great movie.
No.
1/3 of that movie is horrible. 1/3 of that movie is garbage.
Yeah.
But as soon as King comes into the picture, then you get something of a movie. You get actually a decent movie and a decent conflict and decent stuff. Sad that I don't want to give credit to the actor who's portraying King.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to
Same.
get into that in this
No.
call,
No.
but you can't deny the charm of Paul Rudd, and you can't deny that everyman underdog quality. And you certainly see that finally take form in this movie 2/3 into it after a whole bunch of bull crap in the first act. Having said that, sorry, that was a tangent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at the time that the Netflix series went off the air, Marvel was at its literal peak between Infinity War and Endgame. I thought to myself, Marvel sadly doesn't need Daredevil. It's good. It's literally the most powerful, bulletproof franchise on the planet. That's what I thought. And because of that, I was like, they're never going to bring Daredevil back. They're going to recast, or even if I don't know, who knows if they'll even have Daredevil in that. And this because things were working so well for the MCU, the R-rated nature of this show would never be anything that would fly. That's why we're not getting Deadpool back. That's why we're not getting Daredevil back. That's why we're not getting Jessica Jones back, etc. Um, and lo and behold, something happens. Marvel kind of loses its way. um,
Yeah.
you know, not in a bad way. Look, I while most people will tell you that the MCU has completely lost it, I disagree. I think that there have been some missteps, and that comes in the surplus of content. But for the most part, I've actually been enjoying it. I don't think that the multiverse saga holds a candle in any way, shape, or form to the Infinity Saga, but there's
Mhm.
really good stuff there. There's really good stuff that's fire. More than anything, I'd say that it's more of a mixed bag. But But because they started missing, and they never missed, they were the bullseyes before, and now they're the, I don't want to call them the daredevils because daredevil's pretty good with aim, but whatever. Now,
Yeah.
since they've been missing with a few things here and there, She-Hulk, Secret Invasion. If you want to lump Quantumania in there, I'm not going to blame you. A lot of people put Eternals in there, even though I like Eternals.
Hmm.
But yeah, Thor: Love and Thunder, even though I like Thor: Love and Thunder, a lot of people have been seeing these missteps. So for them to bring back Charlie Cox in No Way Home, that really restored my faith into Marvel's A, recognition that they've been making missteps, and B, the acknowledgement that they're not above what worked before. You know, especially when Feige wasn't involved in the Netflix series.
Hmm.
He knew that despite the fact that maybe he, Jeff Loeb, and Ike Perlmutter at the time weren't on the same page, it certainly wasn't Charlie's fault. It certainly wasn't Vincent's fault. And given the fan reaction and the love for these two characters, why would you ever want to change that? I mean, it's why would you do a stupid decision like that? It's like going, oh, I don't want TV to touch my movie franchise, so I'm going to cast Ezra Miller, who's problematic, instead of Grant Gustin as the Flash.
Yeah.
I don't know where that example came from,
Uh-huh.
just hypothetically speaking,
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
but yeah, Feige didn't do that, and I love that. Now, as far as the direction that Feige initially wanted to go, whatever those speculations and what happens were, between that original run and then scrapping it and then redoing it again, I'm very curious about that. But I'm also kind of glad that they did that, and we'll get into that when we talk about Borton again. But I, long story short, I never thought in a million years that we'd see these characters, and I'm glad that Marvel Studios had the foresight and the self, reflection to understand that they're not above these two performers, these two versions of the characters,
Yeah.
and that this was great stuff that they needed to bring back,
Yeah.
and to integrate,
Yeah, and it was. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's finally getting integrated.
Yeah. What about you? Did you think for a second that you were going to get these guys back?
Um, I think at the time I felt like it was just done. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was just like this is the last we'll see of these characters,
Yeah.
and it never existed. So good to see them because I love that show. Yeah.
Me too. Here's a secret. That you wouldn't believe this considering what I'm wearing right now, but
Uh-huh.
Matt is only my second favorite of the Defenders.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's a wonderful and complex character. I think there's one more character out of that set that's more complex, more interesting, and more broken, which I love, and that's Jess.
Hmm.
Jessica Jones was always my favorite. So I love that they brought Matt and they brought Wilson back and they brought back Deborah and they brought back John and they brought back everyone. I am still waiting on pins and needles for them to bring back Kristen Ritter as Jess, because Jessica Jones was and always will be my favorite, the most complex, the most tortured of these characters, and the one with the hardest backstory. So, um, thank God they brought Charlie back. Thank God they brought the whole cast back, because now it's opening up the door for all of my favorites to come back,
Yeah.
and one of my least favorites to not come back.
Possibly.
So
Possibly. We'll see. All right. So Daredevil Born Again finally came out. Reshoots, be damned. But the season, how did you feel just seeing the original cast come back? That was kind of iffy for a little bit. And yeah, just what were your thoughts on the season?
if Karen and Foggy weren't going to come back, if Eldon and Deborah weren't going to come back, then I was going to have problems, honestly. They were even talking about and no offense to Sarah Dean Holt, she's a wonderful actress. They were talking about casting her as Vanessa, but when they announced that, I was like, why? Is doing an amazing job. She was fantastic as Vanessa. Why would you do that? And then
Yeah.
thank God they didn't move forward with that other direction. They scrapped it, and then they brought back the whole cast. To me, that was a triumph. If you're going to do this, if you're going to introduce Charlie back, if you're going to introduce Wilson back, there's no other route to go than consistency.
Hmm.
And I don't know why Marvel Studios thought to do something different. That made no sense. I imagine that it's because they were like, oh, well, we've got the multiverse. This could be Charlie Cox, but it's a variant of the one that we saw in that universe, and we want to make it our thing instead of Netflix thing. And I'm like, no, no, don't do that. Come on. Don't let this multiverse shenanigans that you're doing, which have been hit and miss, taint something so beautiful, which was the Netflix show. And thank God they got the message. I think Charlie and Wilson, or sorry, I call them Wilson, Charlie and Vincent were instrumental in getting that message across.
Hmm.
And I think the results speak for themselves, man. I mean, like this, for me, you and I were kind of chatting about this offline.
Hmm.
This was a banger. This was a banger for me. I know that a lot of folks out there might be a little bit mixed, but to me, this hit so hard and it made me feel like this was the Netflix series again, but with better pacing. That I thought was interesting. And that's the thing. It feels like season 4 to me. I know that a lot of people will debate that, and I'm thinking that a lot of people are debating that because they're looking at it through the Marvel anti-Marvel Studios fog.
Yeah.
And I get that. I get that. Right now, the MCU hasn't pleased everyone. A lot of people are cynical about it. And as such, their reflections of what they see on the screen will be affected and potentially tainted by that fog, by that cynicism. And maybe that's also, double-edged sword because I'm someone who still loves the MCU. I don't care, with the exception of She-Hulk and Secret Invasion. I love this. Um, and maybe that's what's causing me to love this show so goddamn much. But as someone who rewatched the entire Netflix show before Born Again came out, because it has been years, of course, since the last time we saw, Fisk and Matt, duke it out on screen. um, I started to see some of the cracks in
Hmm.
the Netflix series. I started to see some of the pacing that was off. Like that first season is wonderful. It's a slow season. It's a slow burn.
Yeah.
And there are episodes that felt like filler where not a whole lot happens. At least with Born Again, as much as you might want to argue that the bank episode or whatever, didn't have anything necessarily to do with any other episodes, when you look at it from a character perspective, when you look at it from the development of Matt as a character and the development of Fisk as a character and their parallel journeys, becoming once more Kingpin and Daredevil, um, it couldn't be more consistent. All of that was in service of those character developments. It doesn't matter what the narrative is for the specific episodes or whatever, so long as, from a character perspective, we are building consistently on the relationship between these two characters and the relationships with their other selves. It all goes back to that diner scene, which I
Hmm.
like to call the heat
Great
scene.
scene. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the heat scene basically. It's the Marvel Cinematic Universe equivalent of De Niro and Pacino meeting at the diner. And if you remember in Heat, these two titans of the screen get in front of each other, and what do they say to each other? They say, "You do what you do, I do what I do."
Yeah.
You know, and that's literally what Kingpin and Daredevil are saying to each other in so many words at that diner scene, which is a phenomenal scene. And you know what? That has to kick off this season. That has to kick off this series because that's what we see as the season progresses. These two characters doing what they do. They can't run from that.
No.
Neither of them can. And those parallel journeys and every step that each of these characters is taking in fulfilling those ultimate destinies and in coming back to who their true selves are, it's all there in every single episode, you
Hmm.
know? And that's what I loved about this. Um, can I go on a quick tangent? I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
sure.
I'm
Yeah.
monopolizing the
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
I I like Severance. I think it's a good show. I
Hmm.
was asked to review Severance, and for better or worse, a lot of people look at Severance as one of the best shows on TV. You know, I I got very frustrated after
Mm.
this season. It's a very frustrating show for me.
I haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
it's artistic, it's all of that and everything like that. I would argue that Daredevil Born Again is a far more consistent show than Severance is.
Mm.
I'm
Mm.
sorry to say that.
No, it's
If you look at
sounds.
season 2 of Severance, you have a random episode of Patricia Arquette with literally no payoff in that season, in the story that they're trying to tell for that season. You've got an entire episode where the goat people are introduced, and the one payoff that you have is a conflict scene at the end with, Christy, what's her name? Help me out here. What's her name? Gwendolyn Christie.
Yeah.
Gwendolyn Christie Adam Scott and I'm gonna call him Yaya Ding Dong guy. And there you have a whole episode around Miss Casey slash Gemma, which is a great episode, but probably the best episode of the season. But a friend of mine was saying, well, all of this season was about Mark, and I was like, well, hang on. If all of this season was about Mark, why do we have suddenly a random one-off episode of Patricia Arquette and this random town that has no payoff at all? You literally just detracted from an entire season's worth of episodes. It's such an inconsistent season of television from the outing, where they're in whatever the Cure field trip thing or whatever it's called, the Orb Go or something like that or whatever, to an entire episode with just outies, an entire episode with just innies. It was all over the place, and I don't think it landed nearly as well as what I think they did with Daredevil Born Again. And maybe it's my comic book bias. Maybe, that's what it is. Maybe people like Severance because they think it's an elevated show, and maybe it's just, I'm gonna flat out say pretentiousness. I'm not here
Yeah.
to bash Severance. I'm not here to bash anyone
Sure.
that loves Severance, and I'm not calling anyone who loves Severance pretentious. But I'm just saying that if you're gonna call Daredevil Born Again an inconsistent show and Severance a consistent show, then there's certainly some sort of bias going on there, because there's a whole lot of crap going on that you don't need in that season of television that might tell some story down the line 3 years later when season 3 comes out, but it's not telling any sort of story or resolving anything now in season 2. Whereas at least with Daredevil Born Again, every episode is building on Fisk and Matt and their journeys. And that's what I really loved about it. That's what I really thought was well done, and in some ways better than the Netflix series, because you're getting there in a shorter period of time without a whole lot of filler. And that to me, like longer, draggier episodes that you didn't really need, that to me makes Daredevil Born Again, hot take here, a worthy season 4 to that entire Netflix series, improving upon some of the flaws of the entire 3-season run of that Netflix series. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I know that I pissed off everyone who's watching this right now. Sorry, Severance fans.
That's
Sorry,
all right.
Netflix fans. But I'm going to be strongly opinionated about that, and I'm going to stand on that, hill until I die. But yeah, I so far this has been a freaking amazing season of television. I think it earns the mantle of being part of that Netflix legacy.
Yeah, well said. And then just what was your I was so glad to see Charlie Cox back as Daredevil. Seeing him, well, I mean, we see him in She-Hulk, but just like as the star of his own show, it's like that was cool.
Yeah,
It's just
that
great.
I love Charlie, and I don't think, it's funny because there was a time when the Netflix series first aired where I was like, he's great. He's so much better than Ben Affleck, but he's not my definitive Matt Murdock. I can't say that anymore. I can't say that anymore. He is the definitive Matt Murdock for me. All these years just watching him become this character, and the character become, carry on aspects of Charlie too. There's a charm to his performance. And every time, whether he's in the suit or not in the suit, whether he's Matt or whether he's Daredevil, he's so good. He's so good at this, phenomenal as this character. And I don't want anyone else being
No,
Daredevil. I
yeah,
didn't even want anyone else being Daredevil after season 3, but more so now because, man, it's just good to have him back. It's just wonderful to have him back. What do you think?
no, it was just he fit like a. It was like he fit like a glove being back. He just really went back in the role, and seeing him go to different places with the character was really interesting. I guess we'll go on full on spoilers at this point, well, if you haven't seen it, but him reacting to Foggy's death,
Yep.
almost killing Bullseye, was really went to some dark places. I wouldn't say it's like full on like Snyder cut or something, but like it was very interesting because he was in a moment of like passion, and he almost kills Bullseye, and he was
Yeah.
trying to fully intending to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that goes into who Matt is as a character. Matt has to suppress so much anger and so much rage. And especially so in Born Again, because after what happens, he doesn't want to be Daredevil anymore, and he wants to let the system, a crooked and corrupt and broken system, take over. And that really is, the whole point of the series is Matt being consistently challenged by the broken nature of this system. So much so that that moment in the second episode where he beats up the corrupt officers that are trying to kill Hector,
Mm-hmm.
and he just screams in rage from that moment to the moment that he unloads on his partner. God, why is it escape? Why is her name
Oh,
escaping me?
that's all right.
Yeah. When he unloads on her, Karen McDuffie, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, not Karen McDuffie. Whatever her name is.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I feel bad. It is Karen?
That I'm blinking on, but
Okay,
his
it's
partner
fine.
in the law firm,
Yeah, McDuffie.
McDuffie. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, when he's unloading on her, it is the culmination of everything that we have seen building up this season. It is the culmination of Hector. It's the culmination of Muse. It's the culmination of Fisk. It's the culmination of the task force. He's just he's frustrated, and that rage has always been there. So when he in that moment is where he's got Bullseye in his hands and he's listening to Foggy's heartbeat, he just doesn't care anymore. That rage has consumed him. And he's just thrown it off, throws Bullseye off. It's a shocking moment to be sure. It's one that I think is becomes a consistent motif throughout the season, whether or not that act is justified, especially when Frank comes in, because Frank would definitely be like that act is justified.
Yeah. Yeah.
Letting Bullseye kill Wilson Fisk would be an act of a justified act as well. Frank's beliefs, reinforcing what Matt's thinking in that first episode it's kind of brilliant, when you think about it. But yeah, you know, there's poor Matt. That's all I could say. Poor Matt, poor Foggy. um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Poor Karen.
Yeah.
Everyone's sad. Everyone's just sad.
So yeah, no,
It's a
it's a
very
lot.
sad, very sad lot of characters. Nobody's happy except for Tony Soprano's kid. So yeah.
Yeah, I love Michael Gandolfini. He's great. He's a really fun addition. I love him as kind of like a mini Fisk.
Mini
You know?
Fisk, man. And Mini Fisk is just so smarmy and sleazy. Oh, Michael Gandolfini's such a good actor, but you do want to slap the crap out of him. I
Yeah.
can't deny.
He has some good additions to the cast, but
Yeah.
another return was the Punisher, Frank Castle. It's good to
Yes.
see because that's another person where it's like, okay, we're gonna have him back, and
Yep.
Bernthal really delivers when he fights off the copycat vigilante task force.
Yeah.
Great, great scene all the
Great
way in the
scene.
finale.
Great scene.
Um, it's awesome seeing him unload on the Punisher. Also, you get like, okay, if we're gonna bring back the Punisher, it's gonna be very R-rated.
Can I ask
So
you something?
yeah, sure.
Um, for your money, is there anyone else better suited to play Frank Castle than John freaking Bernthal?
No, I don't think so.
No, right?
No.
Yeah. It was just so perfect. Where, even your favorite season of the Netflix series, that was my favorite thing about it, honestly. It was Bernthal. And I wanted Bernthal so badly, and I knew that it was never going to happen because, again, the bias against comic book shows within the Academy is just astonishingly terrible. But he delivers this monologue as he's sitting on, I believe it's a grave, and Matt is asking him about his history, and he's talking about, his kids, and that's where he gets into the one batch, two batch, penny and dime story. And Bernthal's work in that scene deserved an Emmy nomination, man.
Mm,
It was goddamn phenomenal. That was the moment that I was like, nope, no one else. I don't want anyone else putting on that skull. It has to be Bernthal. He's the only one that can play Frank Castle. So when they brought him back, I was so flippin' happy. I was so happy, and I'm glad. I think Bernthal eventually got his Emmy, but for The Bear, which is an equally great show and performance. I want to say he won, but anyways, he
Yeah,
at least he got a nomination.
love
So
him.
yeah,
I
he's
love,
so good.
yeah, seeing him pop up in The Bear is always awesome.
Yeah.
But any thoughts on just like the reshoots? Because it's like I think that they course corrected it well enough, but you'll see like the episode in the bank with
Yeah.
Miss Marvel's dad.
Hmm.
That's kind of like a bottle episode of like what the season could have been if they didn't course correct. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't not like that episode, but it's
No,
interesting to see that one still there because that was the only thing left over. I was told.
that
I was reading.
what that is the for me that bottle episode. Um, while take my words with a grain of salt, I
Hmm.
think it's the least good episode this season, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that I don't like the episode. I think it is the solid B plus and the sole B plus among an episode, a season of A's, in my opinion.
Hmm.
I don't even care that Muse got a 2 episode arc. I thought that 2 episode arc was great, and it actually does a lot to justify why Matt's girlfriend Heather Glenn would want to start working for Kingpin and the trauma that she incurs and everything like that. I thought that was great. It also sets up Angela Del Toro to potentially take on Hector's White Tiger mantle later on.
Hmm.
The trauma from that. To me, you know, all of the episodes were A's, including that 2 episode arc, except for the Kamala Khan for the use of Khan episode.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it was a bad episode. It just means that all the other ones were so much better that this is the only one that kind of stands out. However, I will say this: for as much of a bottle episode as that is, everything going on with the Irish tracksuit mafia
Yeah.
plays into
The not
Fisk's
tracks
story,
mafia.
and everything regarding the helplessness of the situation feeds into Matt's desire to once again put on, the cowl. And you can't have, and forgive me, I'm gonna curse because I'm just reciting the line
It's all
from the
good.
episode. You can't have the fuck it scene in the Muse episode unless you have this episode,
Mm.
and that I think is so important. It's so important to have that scene. It's so important to have the use of Khan episode, the way that Matt unloads on the lead robber, smashing his leg in half and busting his face into
Yeah.
like a bottle of glass, a glass bottle. I mean, that's Matt coming back ever so closer to Daredevil status. And it all happens in this episode because he's already frustrated, he's already tired. Hector had just died, you know. Fisk is still in charge and becoming more powerful by the moment. All these mafia people are tied to Fisk. He's still not, losing. He's still he hasn't lost his touch as a criminal kingpin. Um,
Yeah. I
but
know.
he's still got this power. He's still got his mayoral power. So Matt's frustrated at this point. So he's just like, screw it. The system's not doing anything about this. I'm just gonna goddamn do something about it. And then he does. So it's a very important episode, and so I still really like it. It is also the episode that I know Marvel used to be like, hey guys, look, we're part of the MCU.
Uh-huh.
Because here's Yusuf Khan, he's talking about Kamala. Ooh, I have a team up someday. And that's okay with me because Yusuf was great in this episode, and Kamala Khan's family, Yusuf, Maniba, her brother, Kamala herself, these are wonderful characters. And why wouldn't characters from New Jersey interact with characters from New York
They're
in this
really
universe?
close. Yeah.
It's the same. Yeah, I mean, it's literally the same neighborhood. You can't go into Hell's Kitchen and talk about Hoboken and not have people who don't have friends there, or at least people who know people who are there.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's all part of this connected universe. But in the case of these two cities, neighboring cities, it's bound to happen. It's
Yeah.
bound to happen. And who knows? Maybe we might see Amon Villani in season 2 of Daredevil as part of the army, man.
Yeah.
That'd
Well,
be cool. I'd be down for that.
I think we might see that. There's a better chance of that than seeing Spider-Man.
She is cheaper than Tom.
Yeah.
No offense
Well,
to Amon, who I actually think is fantastic. I
she's,
love Amon Villani so much.
yeah, great
Uh,
actress.
yeah, she's a
Um,
wonderful actress.
because I was gonna say anyone I think still asking where Spider-Man was, it's like he was saving people or helping people, get to safety. That
A blackout, a
yeah.
massive blackout happened, and we didn't we left off we leave off the series, or at least the season, with the next morning. So we don't really know what the aftermath and what happened during the blackout, you know. We don't know the events that happened there.
Yeah.
Certainly Luke Cage had to have stepped up for Harlem. Jess was probably trying to help
Hmm.
bring order to the chaos, and Spidey's got to be swinging around there somewhere.
Yeah, he
And
was.
Kingpin certainly knows about his existence. So,
Yeah, he was out there. He was away.
yeah.
But kind of winding down here, um, as a Devil's Reign, sort of adapting that. I thought it towards the later half of the season, it did it really well.
Yeah.
Very timely for
Hmm.
obvious reasons.
Incredibly timely for obvious
Yeah,
reasons, and I'm glad that they said something about it. Quite frankly,
yeah,
because we're headed down that road. So
hmm,
it's terrifying to think about, but it's true.
yeah. Not unrealistic. Kingpin being elected.
Yeah,
So
we're one tariff flip flop away from martial law. Unfortunately, we
yeah,
are. You
yeah.
know,
But I think just the that added to how well done this season was as a whole. Appreciated it. It was something to look forward to every week.
you,
And
you
mhm,
kind of have to love as well that like the reverence and the relevance of the Devil's Reign storyline, the Mayor Fist storyline today, it's not shoved down our throats.
no,
It organically works as entertainment as well. So it's not like something that's just, there like for an example, you
mhm,
remember Falcon Winter Soldier, you remember Sam's speech at the end. That
mhm,
was so heavy-handed.
right.
In an otherwise pretty decent series, that was a really heavy-handed moment. None of Daredevil Born Again feels heavy-handed. It all
No,
feels very organic.
yeah,
This is what this character would do. You'd understand why New York would vote for him. You know, it all feels so timely, so true. As close to reality as you're going to get in a universe filled with gods and monsters and
aliens.
superheroes and aliens. And I love that about it, honestly.
Yeah, it's supposed to be based on reality, the Marvel universe. So
Yes, indeed. It's always been its appeal.
yeah. But any final thoughts on the season before we let you go?
I gave it an A. I have a review out on the Nerds of Color. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I gave it an A.
Nice.
I think that these the performances of Charlie and Vincent, they haven't lost a beat, but more than that, they've gotten richer and deeper. I think that this is a worthy continuation of the Netflix series, one that does away with some of the filler pacing episodes. And I think the writing has never been more beautiful in a Daredevil show to end the season with the line, "This is the city without fear."
Hmm.
You can just see that in a
So
narration bubble on the last panel of a comic book, of a Daredevil comic
yeah,
book, and that shot of him in Josie's with the newspapers taped up in a circle, and he's just in the center as the lights are flashing on his face now as Daredevil, like they were at the end of the first episode with him as Matt. That bookend, there's something so poetically beautiful and well done about it. I know Dario Scapandi, I think, who was a writer on The Punisher before. He was the one that was brought in as the showrunner, replacing the old showrunners on the show, and I'm so glad that he was, because he did bring a bit of Netflix to this show, especially especially the poor commissioner's death.
yeah,
um,
yeah.
Jesus Christ. Um, but overall, I think Sana Amanat, the directors, Aaron Benson,
Moorhead and Benson.
Justin
Yeah.
Moorhead and Benson, yeah. Um, they all did such a phenomenal job bringing this back, and I think Marvel Television, live action Marvel Television, honestly, you couldn't ask for anything better. This is peak. This is legitimately the best Marvel Television has ever been. And in my opinion, the only thing that's one upping this is X-Men 97 in my book. That's
Oh
an A
yeah.
plus, while this is
I
an
love that
A.
show.
Yeah. But that is that, if we're talking live action, this takes the cake. I think this is hands down the best that Marvel, Studios has done, putting out streaming content in the post Chapek era.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and between this and my other favorites were Moon Knight, Hawkeye, Ms. Marvel, and WandaVision, and Loki. This tops them all.
Hmm.
The maturity, the themes, the acting, the character relationships, the development and the growth, and how they interact with each other. This is as peak as you're ever going to get. This is as prestigious you're ever going to get, and I'm so grateful that they brought this back. So
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good note to end on, I'd say. Yeah, but what a great season. It's great to feel excited about Marvel Television again, a Marvel Television show that's not X-Men. So yeah, I cannot wait for season two, and then this is only volume one of a story, so
yeah,
we'll see that. But Mike, thank you so much for jumping on this episode. It was great to have you on. I know we've been, see each other at cons, so it's really good to hear your thoughts, especially on a comic book show, because I know you're a big fan. But any listeners, where can people find you at?
absolutely. So you can find my work on the nerdsofcolor.org. In fact, if you go to the Nerds of Color YouTube channel, I've got my Daredevil interviews on there as well.
Oh,
We
cool.
talked to Charlie Cox, we talked to Vincent D'Onofrio, we talked to Sanaa, Dario, Justin, and Aaron as well, the directors.
Mhm.
Um, please go check them out. They're a lot of fun. They had some great answers to everything. No spoilers, of course, but good stuff. So if you want more Daredevil, definitely check that out. We've got more stuff coming to the Nerds of Color. I'm also on geeksofcolor.co.
Mm.
I'm on what'towatch.com occasionally. I'm also on That's It LA occasionally. And
Mm.
find me on Instagram at Cosmic Correspondent. And most importantly, Gene, thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. I'm so grateful for this.
Oh, you're
And,
welcome.
whenever you need me, I'll be there.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to say that with the mask on just once, so
Of
there you go.
course. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, no, you're welcome. Be glad to have you back, and I'll be sure to put all the links to all your work in the description below. But yeah, thanks, Mike. We'll definitely have you on again too. I don't know what we'll talk about, but it'll probably be something comic booky.
Anytime, anywhere, I'll be there.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, you could find the Waffle Press at the Waffle Press podcast on Instagram, at the Waffle Press on Twitter. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube. Please like, share, subscribe. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We've been professionally unprofessional.